Hi, so I had to completely restructure this video because this topic is just blowing my mind. It keeps opening up new places to explore, new ways to explore, so prepare for a journey, perhaps a multi-week journey. I will explain more at the end. For now, buckle in and enjoy. Oh, and also this video was brought to you by Squarespace. Okay, so how does Arcane write intelligence is the question. Arcane has a ton of really smart characters, and it also has... Okay, yeah, sorry, different topic. But Arcane has a ton of geniuses in its cast, and what I love so much is that it's not just a big quantity, it's variety. All these super smart characters, they are such clear examples for learning purposes of how to write entirely different archetypes of intelligence. So let's go through them all. I broke it into 10-ish archetypes, and we're starting with Victor. Type 1 is the academic. This person is highly educated in a STEM or liberal arts field. They generally come with a specific personality profile. They are diligent, they're quiet, they're nerdy, and they also come with a lifestyle. Their life revolves around research and or education. Their social life is other academics, or sometimes they're more of a loner. And arcs involving these characters, arcs involving academics, seem to depict a certain kind of confinement or limitation. Maybe they're ambitious and they struggle with the limits of what they can do from their position as a scholar who's separated from the world, or their position as a scientist in a lab versus someone who is active in the world. Maybe the arc is about becoming acquainted with that, learning what it looks like to not be limited. But either way, their arc takes them beyond what your average, lowly, faceless academic scholar is capable of. Archetype 2 is the clever one. And for this, we're chiefly talking about Mel and Mbessa. And I will say that clever as a term is like what we say when these characters are mostly good. Crafty is what we call it when these characters are a little bit more sinister, and then manipulative or Machiavellian is when it's at like the most sinister. But still, I think it's all the same quality. So this person has an intuitive and practically oriented grasp of layers of reality that are usually hidden for the average person. If this is in the area of people, like it is for Mel and Mbessa, it's being able to quickly understand aspects of others that they don't even understand themselves, and then be able to work effectively with that knowledge towards a practical end. These characters are able to get people on their side, manipulate them into positions that are beneficial to them, etc. And then the other kind of cleverness that you generally see depicted is in the area of strategy and puzzles. You take a character like Shikamaru from Naruto or L from Death Note, and it's the same quality of still being able to see steps ahead of what other people can see, and it's often still about psychology, but the difference is that it feels like it's more relegated to the realm that these characters operate in. It's not like a general knowledge of how people work. And a step up from the clever person is our third archetype, which is the mastermind. Here we got examples like Silco and Singed. These characters work similarly to the clever person, but on a categorically grander scale. We have some big ambitious plan that spans the whole plot, encompasses the whole narrative in some form. Often it's a central villain like Silco, but you could do this as a side character like Singed. It's not as common. But either way, what sets the mastermind apart is that their understanding of people and whole segments of society and how to manipulate them doesn't just work a few steps ahead, they are futures ahead of the rest of the cast. We'll see clever characters like Mel being able to think on their feet and operate quickly within like a specific scene. She can pick up on the subtleties, she can see the underlying motives, she can react, she can say the right thing, she can get the whole room working for her. But that's the difference. The mastermind doesn't need to do anything at the point where we find them. They don't need to react. They plan this all out, they put the whole thing in motion, started long ago, and now they can just sit in the center of their web, and you'll unwittingly come to them. All the pieces will just slowly fall into place, seemingly of their own volition, with almost like no active input from the mastermind, just little tweaks here and there, just getting the ball rolling, and that's the way the genius of this character expresses itself through the narrative. We see these small pieces falling into place, and then we have this larger scale version of it that's just looming in the distance, and we know it's getting closer and closer, and we feel like we can't stop that big version any more than we could stop the small pieces from falling into place. Archetype number 4, or 4A we'll call it, is the mad genius. Obviously we're talking about Jinx here, and to me this archetype works by reversing a lot of the conventions of the scholar archetype. Instead of quiet, the mad genius is explosive emotionally. Instead of diligence and discipline leading to progress, it's specifically losing control. That could be through sheer obsessiveness. They are consumed by their work to an almost terrifyingly inhuman degree, or it could be in method/process, the way they do science and research, the way they take steps towards achieving goals. It isn't boring research and lab work, it's doing crazy out of control things to make crazy out of control leaps in scientific accomplishment. And that's the other difference. The scholar often makes slow, steady progress over long periods of time, and then the mad genius often makes extreme breakthroughs all at once, sometimes after long periods of seemingly no progress at all. And there's usually an equation here that the more mad, the more genius. It links intelligence with self-sacrifice. The more you give yourself over to the unknown, to the wild whims of your active intellect, the closer you can fly to that tantalizing sun of achieving your extreme and often forbidden goals. It's a deal with the devil. You lose something vital, your mind, your humanity, parts of your life, but you get what you cannot get from conventional means, from what's typically seen as permitted by society, by morality, by sanity. And a lot of what this archetype hinges on is just how profoundly mysterious this trait feels to us. The ideas themselves that comprise like knowledge and science, those make sense to us, but knowledge as a whole, it's like, where does it come from? Especially when it takes you so far into something that doesn't exist yet. Some dream, some vision of what's possible. It can look like madness and it can feel like madness internally, because it's true that you're not connected with the reality that's right in front of you. Your thoughts are taking you somewhere alien. So that's Powder's madness genius bunny meme. but I want to contrast this archetype with what I'm calling 4B, the evil genius. I do think it's two different sub-archetypes, often with much overlap, and I think there is overlap in the phenomenon itself. Mad geniuses are actively engaged in this process of sacrificing part of their humanity. Every day they sacrifice more and more and more. Evil geniuses have already long sacrificed it all, or maybe they never had it in the first place. Their work is just so disturbing that they couldn't even show up every day if they had one shred of humanity left in them. So that's one difference, which really denotes a much more primary difference, which is moral alignment. The evil genius is someone who specifically works towards evil ends. The mad genius can theoretically be neutral or good, which is what we see with Jinx in season 2. And that leads to the third big difference, which is chaos order alignment. Mad geniuses have wild, chaotic personalities. They lose control to make progress. And evil geniuses can be that, or they can be diligent and disciplined and quiet and ordered like the academic personality we talked about. And this difference manifests as well in the quirkiness spectrum. From fun to disturbing, mad geniuses are often a little bit more towards the fun side of eccentricity and quirkiness. Maybe it's a fun hairstyle, or maybe they burp when they speak. Evil geniuses also have something setting them apart, but it's not very funny at all. It's creepy, it's unnatural, it's dark. Contrasting with all the categories we've talked about so far is number 5, which is the street smart person. So this is characters like Vi, and yeah, Vi, I'm sorry about the little joke from before. Please don't smack me. Actually, you know what? Yeah, you can smack me. You can smack me any day, Vi. But anyway, this is familiarity with the unwritten rules of how society works. It functions almost like cleverness, but it's not based on like an inborn intuition. It's either application of direct knowledge, or it's an intuition that's heavily based in experience. There's the normal assumption of how something in the social realm would work. This is how you get information. This is how people operate. This is the best way to do X or Y. But then the street smart person knows, no, you get information in this unexpected way, which is a little bit secret. No, people here work in this way that's not so obvious. The best way to do X or Y is this hidden thing that only the locals know about. Often street smarts involve having a certain edge, for lack of a better term. It's usually being aggressive in some way, either like actually physically aggressive or in personality. And often that's there to give context to why what we thought was just like an aggressive, chaotic culture is actually more nuanced and ordered than we once assumed. But it just works through this behavioral language that refined society has preconceived judgments about. We can contrast this with number 6, which is the educated person. So you have Kate. Kate is not a genius, but she is smart. She comes off as a kid who got good grades in school. And like the academic, this comes with a similar quiet, studious personality. We see Kate in her detective work making use of almost like school project-like abilities to advance her knowledge, but she also comes off as someone who did learn about the world, but just from a big fancy classroom. She is sheltered. She has ideas about how the world works, but they're manufactured, meaning they're ideas that were taught to her by other people who haven't seen any more of the real world than she has. Educated characters often have stories about realizing the limits of their education. They realize they're not very smart at all, despite having been told by their societies that they are, and being out of the classroom, seeing things, experiencing life, for better or for worse, that's what gives them a real education. Number 7 is the autodidact, and this is a small and uncommon category, but I think it's worth mentioning, especially since we have characters like Echo and Jinx. Self-taught people, despite their genius in their respective STEM field or STEM-like field, they have qualities that we often don't associate with smarts, or really academic people don't associate them with smarts. These characters are kind of rough around the edges. They have radically different lives than academics and radically different vantage points.
Genius, though these blades seem improperly pitched.
You're wrong. It's designed for the fissures. Air is denser.
They think outside the box in ways that impress conventionally educated people, and they often have a quality about them that almost seems like survivorship. Most people who are left to fend for themselves just don't get anywhere, they give up. But this person persisted, which means that they must have impressive qualities. They must be especially talented to thrive despite their lack of resources.
Well, the form is crude, but engineering is inspired.
These characters' arcs can either be centered in the realm of science and education or their respective field. Maybe they want to be respected by the mainstream, or their arcs can have very little to do with academia per se. After all, these characters usually just don't have the luxury of devoting their lives to education. But either way, it will almost always involve contrasting their self-taught education with that of conventionally educated characters. Number 8 is the Prodigy. Characters like Jace. And Jace, I could see arguing that he's not actually a prodigy, but Jace definitely partakes of this archetype. And the best definition of how this works is Matt Damon's line in Good Will Hunting.
Beethoven, okay? He looked at a piano, and it just made sense. He could just play. I couldn't paint you a picture. I probably can't hit the ball out of Fenway. I can't play the piano.
But you can do my outcome paper in under an hour.
Right, well, I mean, when it came to stuff like that, I could always just play.
Speed, ease, trusting intuition, natural ability. This is how the Prodigy functions. They don't have to try like other people do.
Well, don't you need to look over these?
I got it.
And I am conflating two different sub-archetypes here, the Prodigy and the Savant archetype. Prodigies aren't necessarily eccentric, Savants are. Prodigies are young, which expresses their speed and ease and naturalness, and Savants aren't necessarily. But either way, with both these categories, we just love seeing these characters show how ridiculously good they are at their thing. And we also love seeing how their prodigiosity extends to like multiple different random realms. Because they're amazing at one thing, they're also amazing at like speaking a random language.
You speak Mandarin?
梗是你鬼懂什么啦？
And I should add, when I say that we love this, sometimes we also hate it. Sometimes this character is a villain or a rival. Sometimes it's really annoying how good they are. But either way, the intelligence functioning in multiple realms thing, that's part of how these characters' intelligence almost functions like a superpower, because that's how it seems to us plebs most of the time. These geniuses are just superheroes, they're magic, they're just better than us normies. Okay, and then archetype number 9 is the wise character. And I think here we can talk about Singed and Vander and Heimerdinger and Echo. I see wisdom generally expressed in 3 ways in fiction, often with overlap. One is this.
The beast is more savage than man.
It's big general statements about how reality works.
There's a monster inside all of us.
Loneliness is often the byproduct of a gifted mind.
Every action sparks a reaction.
Very simple equation. Having a narrow view of things is something we equate with being less wise, and having a broader view is something we see as wise. It's often a broader philosophical view, it's often a broader historical view. Sometimes it's just having access to a broader context, being a broader understanding of people. It can be life experience, seeing how things will play out years from now versus like a narrow in the moment view of things. And so we see another subcategory of expression of this as lessons directly from experience. It's Heimerdinger in the Rune Wars, it's Elrond being there, Gandalf, 3,000 years ago, the day the strength of men failed. It's lines like in the Singed scene where he says directly, in my experience,
no one in power is innocent.
The second major category of expression is this.
Whatever happens, it's on you.
This is basically adhering to trusted values of our conscience. Being responsible is a huge one. Generosity, fairness, love, forgiveness, honesty, humility. I'd also include stuff about self-empowerment and self-love. Being told to listen to our conscience, values that deep down we just know are right and virtuous. Our psyches relate to that as wise. The third one is an odd category.
In the pursuit of great, we fail to do good.
The category is distinctions that ring true, or I guess distinctions in important areas that ring true.
It's not enough to give people what they need to survive. You have to give them what they need to live.
Soon, we must all face the choice between what is right and what is easy.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Do or do not. There is no try.
Our brain loves distinctions. They show us a new and more applicable way of seeing the world, and that feels wise, just like category 1. And also the ability to make these kinds of distinctions implies careful thinking and attention to subtleties, which we see as characteristics of really sharp thinkers. And overall, in general, with this category, you'll almost always see these characters being old, because old equals experience. But I just want to note that they can be younger, either because young people can have experience too.
I should have been there.
That's a good way to drive yourself crazy.
Or they can be younger if that youth implies a certain connection to reality in a more fundamental way, like a pure way.
There is no spoon.
Okay, in archetype number 10, this is the Visionary. And this archetype just segues perfectly into a much deeper layer of understanding of this topic. So Jace and Silco are our 2 examples here. And I just love the way Arcane writes as visionaries, because it's often portrayed as just someone who's passionate about some grand vision. And it can be anyone with a grand vision. And that's just not true. Lots of people have some big idea they're excited about, and they are not visionaries, like in real life. Being a visionary isn't just about some final grand picture. It's about a final picture that's born from and pushed forward by a unique set of ideals. It's where their big grand idea comes from, and it infuses like the whole gestalt of the person. Big fancy word. But you look at visionary leaders of all kinds, business, political, social, religious, ideological, and their core beliefs are in everything they do, everything that they are. Jace has this with his the impossible can be possible and can bring salvation idea, but Silco is the really interesting one. Silco has this monster idea that's everything he is, and it's at the heart of everything he does. It's what he says, it's his politics, it lives in his strategies, his tactics, his parenting. It's in every interaction, and it's not just present. Silco understands this truth deeper than anyone else. And the type of smart that he is, the type of smart that a visionary is, it's almost all about how understanding this one deep truth allows him to do things that no one else can. It empowers him to do incredible feats of strength, it enables his rise to power, it gives him the ability to connect with people who everyone else has given up on, it gives him peace in his final moments. And the 11th archetype of intelligence, perhaps the most important, is web design. We have this Heimerdinger line, the true mark of a genius is being able to... God, I can't do it. I can't do it. I had this whole joke planned out. I can't do it. Squarespace. Hello, from the bathroom of the Long Island Railroad. I had this whole ad that I was going to film in the city because I thought it'd be fun and interesting, but then it was really loud, like abnormally loud even for the city. So I am super annoyed, and you are going to get an ad recorded in the LIR bathroom. And it's not going to have any interesting anecdotes or any funny jokes, but you are going to like it anyway. Okay, ready? Yeah, Squarespace. Buying domains, super easy. No hidden fees, no add-ons. Every dream needs a domain. Actual quote from Zebulon Squarespace when he founded the company in 1884. SEO, search engine optimization. You are going to be so optimized you will not even recognize yourself. Auto-generated sitemaps and meta descriptions. Your site will be so ridiculously findable on all the search engines. And if you want to upload video content, like videos of yourself failing to make Squarespace ads because it's too loud, you can do that too. I got... And if you want donations on your site, like a donation to take to these guys who put up in this really awesome like convertible and then start blasting 90s hip-hop music and then like pay them to stop blasting 90s hip-hop music so I can film my freaking ad, you can do that too. Either a one-time donation or recurring, whatever you want. It's up to you. That's my ad. Go to squarespace.com/schnee for a free trial, and when you are ready to launch, save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using code schnee. Back to the video. Okay, yeah, so back to that 10th archetype, visionaries. Having a single powerful idea that shapes everything. That brings us into the second part of this video. And just a disclaimer, these are not all the different types of intelligence. This is not all you could say about all these different archetypes. There's so much more to say about each and every one. But now that we discussed 10 of these at some level of detail, some fascinating ideas are starting to emerge about just what we mean when we say intelligence. With Silco, we see this intelligence thing isn't a trait exactly. For him, a lot of it comes down to his deep understanding of one idea and the way he relates to that one idea and the way he uses it. You also see this with Mbessa. It's not as centralized.
Tunnels in your eyes, lava in your veins, shadows in your heart. This is the truth of combat.
What is her intelligence comprised of? It's this grouping of ideas about how people work, plus her aggressive personality. And no matter which type of intelligence we're dealing with, I think this question is a very valuable one to ask as a writer. What is the character's intelligence comprised of? So with Silco and Mbessa, it's specific ideas that they use. With Jinx, her intelligence is heavily linked to her creativity and her artistry. With Vander and Heimerdinger and Echo and Singe and Vi, like we said, their intelligence is comprised of life experience. With Singe, specifically, his genius is enabled by his single-mindedness and his coldness. With Jace, it's all about quick learning, it's about vision. And what this means as writers, when you have characters doing things in these situations where they'll be expressing their smartness, by thinking of intelligence this way, we have a ready-made frame for what it will look like. If Jinx does something smart, with her intelligence being linked to her madness and to her creativity, that act of smartness is going to look like a wild art project. If Silco does something smart, it's going to be him applying his monster idea to a situation. And Mbessa is going to be applying her ideas and her aggressiveness. With Singe, his single-mindedness will narrow the focus of a scene.
The mutation must survive. Why does anyone commit acts others deem unspeakable? For love.
Heimerdinger will make reference to experience, Jace will do something fast or he'll assert his vision, Mel will control people specifically by seeing steps ahead of them, using hidden truths about them that they cannot see, and then the next part of the picture, and this is not something which is necessarily part of intelligence, but Arcane loves doing this. Intelligence, just like any strength, can be seen as a cover-up of some weakness. It's our little weapon that we hold onto and we try to use to compensate for our flaws, but it doesn't quite work. Jinx feels useless, weak, and unloved, and she uses her intellect to compensate for that. We see that, we hear her say that directly.
Oh, they wanted to help.
He thinks I'm weak.
Victor is terrified that his life will amount to nothing.
Figments.
And he hopes that his intellect will not just give him more existence, keep him alive, but that it will make his existence matter. Heimerdinger is a terrified little ball of fluff, but when he goes around speaking all pompously and eloquently, it distracts people from how cowardly he is. And that goes all the way up until his fateful council meeting with Jace.
Humans don't live for centuries. I'm sorry, Professor, but healing this city will take more than just speeches.
And Mbessa, as always, is very direct about what is covering up in her.
Because you weakened me.
She is also terrified. She also feels weak and powerless. With Singe, it's super disturbing. It seems like he uses his single-minded scientific mission as like a distraction for how awful his life has become, and really just what he's done to his life.
Love and legacy are the sacrifices we make for progress.
For him, it's somewhere between justification and just willful blindness. Echo and Vander are both trying to use their wisdom, which is valid wisdom. It's true, but they're trying to use it as a way to move past their traumatic past. Echo's past is troubled.
That's a good way to drive yourself crazy.
And Vander's is a past that he regrets.
I'm just not that man anymore.
By holding their principles, they can progress, and when they don't hold to their principles, they backslide to who they were. Some of them more complex than the others, but that's what we see. So if we zoom out, what we're getting here is entire arcs that can be built around this trait of intelligence. We have a starting point, characters who feel weak, who feel lost. We have intelligence coming in and giving direction, empowerment, leading to movement, and then leading to conflict. The smart backfires, we struggle against it, it's not enough, it brings us to places we don't expect, places we don't like. And then we have resolution, which the intelligence plays a role in. It can be a philosophical resolution, it can be a resolution that makes use of skills or ideas that were learned, it can be a resolution that involves learning new ideas. But what I want to stress, and what kind of the upshot of this whole video is that the less you look at intelligence as a trait, like as a simple thing you have in your pocket or on your stat sheet, level intelligence, whatever, plus 50 intelligence points, the less you look at it as that, the more you look at it as this living thing, a character's unique way of relating to specific ideas and experiences and emotions and abilities, that will make your writing of intelligent characters feel deeper and more organic. For Arcane's characters whose intelligence consists of ideas, we see them question those ideas. We see the world go from not making any sense to making sense and then to not making any sense whatsoever again. We see them dig their heels in and stay loyal to those ideas, and then pull a 180, and then recommit to those ideas, or find synthesis, or just end their journey completely transformed intellectually. If their intelligence consists of skills, powers to do, we get arcs about those skills backfiring on them or not being enough. We see those skills turn them into something they don't want to be, enable them to do something that they never wanted to do. And then in the end, we see perfect alignment between who they are and what they do. And in terms of relationships, we don't just see characters paired based on, here's the smart characters and here's the dummies. But no, what this really is that here are characters who are opposite in philosophy, and here are more characters who are opposite in philosophy, and here's characters who are opposite in types of intelligence, and then here's characters whose types of intelligence perfectly complement one another, and then here's characters who have similar intelligence, but one of them really doesn't like that, and then here's characters whose intelligence was born from the same event, but then they took opposite paths from that because they have completely different personalities. Here's characters who go from embracing what intelligence enables them to do to hating it, and then from there to getting more of it than he could possibly dream of, and then that making him really hate what it enabled him to do. And then here's a character who depends on others intellectually, and then who loses that, and he has to figure it out all by himself. We have characters who are lost, but they can do stuff, paired with characters whose intelligence gives them direction, but they can't do anything. We have characters who are very easily manipulated, paired with characters who are great at manipulating, and then characters who are harder to manipulate, paired with characters who are great at manipulating. And we have characters who have just started their intellectual journey, paired with characters who are finishing it, and characters who are finishing it, paired with characters who have just started it. So the advice here is to stop thinking of intelligence as a trait. Think about what your characters can do. Think about areas of life that just make sense to them. Think about what ideas give them unique insight into people or the way the world works or themselves. Think about the limits of their intelligence. Think about where their personality might clash with their philosophy, or think about where society might clash with their philosophy. Think about what their intelligence could enable them to do that they might regret. Think about how philosophy and ability might link them to other characters for plot development, for character growth, when they're at their highest, when they're at their lowest. And really, if we take a giant step back, the huge super duper secret to all of this is that it's not just intelligence that's not really a trait. That's more of a unique relationship of a character to specific ideas and abilities and emotions and experiences. If you think about it, really all traits are just a character's unique relationship to specific ideas and abilities and emotions and experiences. It's everything. If a character is kind, no one is just kind and that's it, end of story. The kindness, maybe it's an ethical philosophy, or maybe it's a unique ability to connect, or maybe they have strong empathetic reactions to people, or maybe they had a mother who raised them to be kind, or a father who was the embodiment of kindness, or they had a father who was a monster and they swore they differentiate themselves from him. Maybe they live in a culture with a certain paradigm of kindness, or it's part of their religion to cultivate a certain idea of kindness, or maybe their kindness is a cover for something much darker. Maybe it's one side of a conflict that they struggle with. Maybe it's what sets them apart in a cruel or cold society. Maybe we're seeing just one stage of a journey that they'll develop out of over the course of the story. Or we can talk about like a jealous character, and then really we'd be talking about maybe a mentality of entitlement, or destructive patterns of thought, or a childhood growing up deprived, or a childhood growing up spoiled, or a high from taking from people, or manipulating people out of their wealth. You can talk about power-hungry characters and talk about where that comes from. Structures of thought, sinister philosophies, traumatic experiences, volatile personalities. You can talk about cowardice this way, and bravery, and immaturity, and anxiety, and flamboyance, and humor, and wildness. You can talk about characteristics old and young, and rich and poor, and quiet and loud, good and bad. All these words are convenient shorthand for wildly complex and diverse phenomena. And if you bypass the handy but for our purposes simplistic label and go straight to the moving parts, you'll see these characteristics as seeds that are growing their own stories before your eyes, instead of dead, inert cliches on your character profile sheets that don't help you at all, but on the contrary, you have to protect your beautiful, fascinating characters from. Okay, hi again. So, the entire reason why I made this video, the entire reason why I started thinking about this topic was this. It was something that I read in Brandon Sanderson's new book, and it was something that made me want to compare how Arcane writes intelligence to how Sanderson does it. But not overall, it was specifically in terms of this thing that I was seeing in this one part of the book. And it was something which was extremely frustrating to me. This is one of the few, or maybe like the only Sanderson pet peeve that I have. I'm generally a huge fan, I read almost everything he does, but this thing that bothered me, I think it's really, really important. Today's video was valuable information, but it was really set up for that discussion. Next week, there's going to be a part 2 of this video that's going to delve really deep. We will be comparing Arcane and its characters to specifically Taravangian, Jasna or Yasna, and there will be a little bit of Ham in there too. And it's going to be highlighting an aspect of this topic that I've been trying to get clear for years. It's going to be a pitfall that is easy for not just writers to fall into, but I think really anyone trying to understand what intelligence is. It's a sentiment that I feel like I hear the echoes of every day. So get ready for a lot, honestly. For this next part of the discussion, I consulted everyone from a neuroscientist friend of mine, to Daniel Green, to Local, to the usual Schnee Helper crew, to Teacher 4. It may involve a small Aramaic lesson if you're into that kind of thing. And we also got a lot more of this face, because it is a book and I cannot edit clips of a book over my voiceover. But yeah, stay tuned for that. We will stop here. Subscribe, support the channel on Patreon. Shout out to the new high-tier patron, Brett Temple. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you to all the patrons. Part 2, as I mentioned, of our intelligence journey is going to be coming next week, Sunday. I'm going to keep this outro short. Hope you all enjoyed, and thanks for watching.